Good day, everyone. My name is Mr. Chisom. Today, we'll be looking at the bones of the foot. We'll be looking at the bones of the foot. So, these bones here are the bones of the foot. There are so many bones in the foot. So, we are going to be looking at them one after the other, and also the joints that are formed between these bones. So, the first bone we have here, which is the biggest bone in the foot, is this bone here. This bone here is the calcaneus. This is the calcaneus. Then we have the talus. This is the talus. Then just anterior to the calcaneus, we have the cuboid bone. We have the navicular bone, which is anterior to the talus. We have the navicular bone. And anterior to the navicular bones, we have the three cuneiform bone. These three are the cuneiform bone. Then we have the metatarsals here. We have the metatarsals here, and we have the phalanges here. So these are the phalanges here. So let me repeat it. I say that the first one we have is this one, the calcaneus or the calcaneus. Then we have the talus. We have the cuboid bone. We have the navicular. We have the three cuneiform bones. We have the metatarsals, and we have the phalanges here. So we'll be looking at these bones one after the other, starting from the calcaneus or the calcaneus. So you can see this is the calcaneus. This is the left bones of the foot, and I also brought the left calcaneus so that we understand these features. So this is the left calcaneus that I brought, and the first feature we'll be looking at here is this part of the calcaneus, known as the body of the calcaneus. So this is the body of the calcaneus. Then we have the calcaneal tuberosity. You see the calcaneal tuberosity. And the calcaneal tuberosity has two processes. It has two processes rather. The one on the lateral side is known as the lateral calcaneal tuberosity, while the one on the medial side is known as the medial calcaneal tuberosity. And this hole is known as the calcaneal tuberosity, then the body of the calcaneus. Then having seen that, still on the lateral side, you see this protrusion here on the lateral aspect of the calcaneus. This protrusion here is known as the peroneal or the fibular trochlear. This is the peroneal or the fibular trochlear. So if you look at, you see this is the fibular bone, and you see this part of the fibular bone coming to lie in this fibular trochlear. So coming to lie there, as you can see. So that is another important feature in the calcaneus. So having seen the fibular trochlear, let's look at the articular surfaces. These are the talar articular surfaces. 1, 2, 3. So this is the posterior talar articular surface. This is the middle talar articular surface, and this is the anterior talar articular surface. You may ask yourself why it is called the talar articular surface. It is because the talus articulates here. So you can see the talus here. This is the articular surface of the talus, or the articular notch of the talus. So you can see how the talus articulates here. So you can see. You see? So the talus articulates here, and that is why they are called the talar articular surfaces. And there are three: the posterior, the middle, and the anterior talar articular surface. So in between the posterior talar articular surface and the middle and anterior talar articular surface, there is a groove here. There is a groove here. This groove is known as the calcaneal groove. It is known as the calcaneal groove. Then, having seen that, just inferior to the middle talar articular surface, just inferior to it, there is a protrusion here. You can see this is the middle talar articular surface. Inferior to it, there is a protrusion here, and this protrusion is known as the sustentaculum tali. It is known as the sustentaculum tali. Then, just inferior to the sustentaculum tali, there is a groove that passes here, and this groove is known as the groove for the tendon of the flexor hallucis longus. It is known as the groove for the tendon of the flexor hallucis longus. So the tendon of the flexor hallucis longus lie in this groove. So I can as well get another calcaneal bone so that we will see this groove very prominent. So if you look at here, this is another talus. This is another calcaneal bone. So you can see that this groove is prominent here. You can see this groove very prominent here. So that is where the tendon of the flexor hallucis longus lie. Then, having seen that, another important feature here is this surface here on the anterior side of the calcaneus. This surface here is known as the articular surface of the cuboid bone. This is where the cuboid bone articulates with the calcaneus. So these are the important features that can be seen in the calcaneus. Then, having seen this, let's go over to the talus. This is the talus. So I told us that the talus articulates with the calcaneus superiorly. So you can see the calcaneus, this is the talus, and you can see how it articulates with it. So first of all, this is the articular surface of the talus, or you can call it the articular facet of the talus. These are the articular surfaces of the talus. Then, having seen that, this part of the talus is known as the head of the talus. You can see the head of the talus. Then you see the neck of the talus, the head of the talus, the neck of the talus. Then we have the trochlear of the talus. This is the trochlear of the talus. Then another important feature in the talus is this protrusion here, the one here, the one here, and the one here. So the one here is known as the posterior talar process. So the one here is known as the posterior talar process. So this is it. While the one here is known as the lateral talar process. This is the lateral talar process. The posterior and the lateral talar process. So that is it for the talus. The head of the talus, the neck of the talus, the trochlear of the talus, the posterior, the lateral talar processes, and the articular surfaces of the talus. Then, having seen the talus, let's go over to other bones that can be found in the in the foot. So we have this bone here, which is known as the navicular. And the only important feature that we can note in the navicular is, you can see the navicular is this is the navicular bone, which is this. The only important feature that we can note here is the navicular tuberosity. The navicular tuberosity. Then you can also see the articular facet of the navicular, where it articulates with the head of the talus. So you can see the head of the talus, and you see how it articulates with the navicular. This is it. The same thing that we can see here. So having seen the navicular, this is the cuboid bone. Then we have the cuneiform. So these are the cuneiform bones. So the one on the lateral side is known as the lateral cuneiform bone. The one in the middle is known as the middle cuneiform bone, and the one on the medial aspect is known as the medial cuneiform bone. So these are the metatarsals: the first, the second, the third, the fourth, and the fifth metatarsals. So the metatarsals are 5 in number. If you turn to the back here, you see this is the first metatarsal, the second one, the third one, the fourth one, and the fifth one. So there is a very important feature in the first metatarsal. You see these two small bone attached here in the first metatarsal, at the back of the first metatarsals. This is known as the sesamoid bones. They are known as the sesamoid bones. Then if you come to the proximal part of the metatarsal here, you see this protrusion here. This protrusion here is known as the tuberosity of the first metatarsal. It is known as the tuberosity of the first metatarsal. So having seen the 5 metatarsals, let's go over to the phalanges. These are the phalanges. The phalanges, we have the proximal phalanges, the middle phalanges, and the distal phalanges. So the same for this: proximal, middle, distal. Proximal, middle, distal. The same for this one. But if you come to the phalanges of this toe here, you notice that it has no middle phalanges. It is only the proximal and the distal. So the phalanges are 14 in number, because the phalanges of the toe, the big toe rather, does not have the middle phalanges. So as you can see it. So let's go over to the joints that can be found in the foot. Since we just saw the phalanges, let's see the joints that can be found within the phalanges. So the joints that are formed between the proximal and the middle phalanges, between the middle and the distal phalanges, are known as the interphalangeal joints. So these are the interphalangeal joints. Then having seen that, let's see the joints that are formed between the phalanges and the metatarsals. These joints is known as the metatarsophalangeal joints. Metatarsophalangeal joints, that is this joint here, is known as the metatarsophalangeal joint. Then having seen the metatarsophalangeal joint, let's see the joints that can be formed between the metatarsals and the talar bones. As a matter of fact, these bones are collectively known as the talar bones. These bones are collectively known as the talar bones. This, do not be confused. This is the talus, but collectively they are known as the talar bones. So The joint that can be formed between the metatarsals and the talar bones are known as the tarso-metatarsal joint. The tarso-metatarsal joint. So this is the tarso-metatarsal joint. Then the joints that can be formed within these talar bones, these are collectively known as the intertarsal joints. They are collectively known as the intertarsal joints. However, each and every one of these joints has its name. Each and every one of these joints has its name, but collectively they are known as the intertarsal joints. So the joints that can be formed between these three cuneiform bones, that is the lateral, the middle, and the medial cuneiform bone, is known as the intercuneiform joint. Intercuneiform joint. Then the joint that can be formed between the cuneiform bone and the navicular bone here is known as the cuneo-navicular joint. So this is the intercuneiform joint. This one here formed between the cuneiform bone and the navicular bone is known as the cuneo-navicular joint. Then the one formed between the cuboid bone here and the navicular is known as the cuboido-navicular joint. That is the one here. Is known as the cuboido-navicular joint. This is it. Then the joint that is formed between the talus here, the navicular, and the calcaneus, that is this joint like this. This joint like this is known as the talo-calcaneo-navicular joint. Do not be confused by the talo-calcaneo joint. This is the talo-calcaneo joint. This is the talo-calcaneo joint. But at the point where it extends to the navicular bone here is known as the talo-calcaneo-navicular joint. So this is the talo-calcaneo-navicular joint here. This is it. Then, having seen that, the joint that is formed between the calcaneus and the cuboid bone here is known as the calcaneo-cuboid joint. So this is the calcaneo-cuboid joint here. So let me do a recap of what I've said so far. I told us that the bones of the foot comprises the calcaneo bone, the talus, the navicular, the cuboid, the cuneiform bone. And I told us that these bones are collectively known as the tarsal bones. They are collectively called the tarsal bones. And I also told us that the cuneiform bone are 3 in number: the medial, the middle, and the lateral cuneiform. This is the metatarsal, which are 5 in number, and this is the phalanges, which are 14 in number. So we've come to the end of this teaching. I'll encourage you to subscribe to my YouTube channel and also follow me on Facebook, Learn with Chisom Great. Then follow me on TikTok, Chisom_great. Like this video, share this video to your friends, and comment on this video. Thank you very much.